Now, our feature presentation.
What's up, Philly? We're the gang from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Let's go Flyers!
Hey everybody, it's me, Timmy Flyers guy, and I want to do a very special episode of Classic Flyers Theater. For those who don't know, Friday, November 11th, is the anniversary of the passing of Flyers goaltender, Pelle Lindbergh. In 1985, he was involved in a serious car accident that unfortunately took his life. This was a hard time for the Philadelphia Flyers, because there were a lot of young kids on the hockey team back in back in that year. And Pelle Lindbergh was kind of like a father to those young kids. And it was a tough time for the city of Philadelphia, as I'm not going to really get into the details of how this whole thing happened, but it was a fatal, he lost his life in a fatal car accident back in the beginning of the 85-86 season, I think it was. And this was a hard time for many Flyers fans, because they loved Pelle Lindbergh. Unfortunately, this was before my time, as I was born 2 years after that. But hearing about this in many of the Flyers DVDs and Flyers VHS tapes that I have, I know from what I heard that Pelle Lindbergh was one of the best Philadelphia Flyers goalies of all time. And I've recently watched some of his highlight videos, and I gotta say, he was a great goalie. And to tell you the truth, if Pelle Lindbergh probably was still in a bit alive, if he wouldn't have died that day, I kind of think the Flyers would have had three or four Stanley Cups, in my opinion. That's how good Pelle Lindbergh was. And when the Flyers lost such a great goaltender, Flyers went through a lot of hard times after that. After losing Pelle Lindbergh, I think they were eliminated by the Rangers in one playoffs. Eliminated by the Rangers, I think in the 86 playoffs. And, well, I forget what happened. They were eliminated by them. I think Bob Froese was the goalie. And, well, things just didn't pan out well for the Flyers after Pelle Lindbergh passed away. Pelle Lindbergh was the heart of the 84-85 team. He got the Flyers to the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, they lost, they only won one game. They lost 4 games to 1, but still, Pelle Lindbergh got the Flyers to the Promised Land. They were close to winning the Stanley Cup. They didn't win, but they were very confident in Pelle Lindbergh's performance. They were very confident in Pelle Lindbergh. So, I wanted to do this video on a Tuesday, but I've decided to I usually do Classic Flyers Theater on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I decided to just do this one on Thursday because this is a special video tribute to Flyers goaltender Pelle Lindbergh. So I wanted to do this episode for November 11th. November 11th is on Friday, but since the day after that's the anniversary of Pelle Lindbergh's death, I thought I would do this episode on Thursday, just so I can get it out there. Well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I have to say, in my opinion, Pelle Lindbergh was one of the greatest Flyers goalies. I don't know if he was the greatest of all time yet, but he was certainly on his way there. He was on his way there to be the greatest goalie of all time. Greatest Flyers goalie of all time. So without further ado, here's a special tribute to Pelle Lindbergh. We're going to take you back. We're going to take you back to November 14th, 1985. We're going to take you back to the pre-game ceremony. The pre-game ceremony, the Flyers goaltending great, Pelle Lindbergh. So I hope you all enjoy this, and remember, let's pay our respects to the great Pelle Lindbergh. And now, before we start this video, let's have a moment of silence for Flyers goaltender and Swedish Olympian Pelle Lindbergh. Thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy this tribute to Pelle Lindbergh.
For it was to be the first meeting since last spring of the two greatest teams in professional hockey. But because of the events of this past week, the night has become a deeper, sadder, and more personal occasion as the Flyers family, the team, the members of the organization and its fans gathered to mourn the loss of one of its own. It will be the Oilers and Flyers later. But first, we ask you to share in a memorial ceremony for Pelle Lindbergh, next on Prism.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bobby Taylor. It's been a difficult and trying last few days, not only for the players and the people that are associated with the Flyers, but I'm sure with you fans as well. Tonight, we'll pay tribute to a young man who touched us all and left a part of himself with everyone that he met, Pelle Lindbergh. With me is Flyers coach Mike Keenan. Michael, goaltenders are always considered a breed apart, and this young man certainly was.
Well, he distinguished himself on the ice, certainly, Bob, as being the best National Hockey League goaltender last year, and of course he was leading us in that direction again this year with his fine play, and he had some things that I guess I could share with the fans now, and knowing some of the idiosyncrasies of Pelle and the anecdotes that would bring him a little bit closer to us. A couple of things that he used to always prepare himself. For example, we had the great series with Washington last year, and it was during the course of that game I became very concerned about dehydration of Pelle, and I went in and demanded me take off the sweater, and I grabbed his sweater and took it off, and he looked at me, and the trainers come running, "Oh, no, you can't do that. He has special idiosyncrasies." And after the game, after we won, he came to me and said, "Coach, I guess it doesn't really make that much difference." And then I thought we had that problem solved until this year. In his last game, I went up to him, and I was talking to him, leaning over him, talking about some of the things that he should be doing, challenging the goalie and so on, or challenging the shooters rather, and at the same time I kicked his mask and gloves on the floor, and he jumps up immediately and adjusts them on the floor and fixes them and straightens them and said, "I still have to have my certain idiosyncrasies in place. He didn't use that word, obviously, but he was telling me that I got away with it once, never again. So he had his own way, and one thing that we always used to do, too, is shake hands after a win. I remember I walked in one night and got preoccupied with some of the post-game activity and forgot to go over there, and it dawned on me about 5 minutes later, and sure enough, he's sitting in the corner waiting for me to come over and shake his hand. So he was a different individual, but a great human being.
How are you going to handle that locker room?
That's a very difficult challenge for us all tonight, but I believe in this hockey club and the people that are on it. They have great character, and they've shown it in the past, and they've shown it through the last 3 or 4 days of very trying times, and the strength of the team as a group is extremely great, and I think the personal strength of each player has been brought out in this tragedy, and I'm sure that we'll make it through the night somehow.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Let's go down now to Ed Van Impe and Gene Hart.
Eddie Van Impe, certainly tragedy is no stranger to the Philadelphia Flyers organization, and I go back to May 1st of 1977.
Well, at that time, the Flyers lost Barry Ashby, who was a very valued defenseman prior to becoming, you know, a real asset as a coach. And thinking back to that, Gene, I mean, it was tough for the players to accept at that time. You know, he was so well liked, so well respected, and so well thought of throughout the hockey world, and it was such a big loss that it took some time to adjust and to deal with it.
Eddie, on Sunday, there was a finality to Pelle Lindbergh because of the severity of his injuries. You were advised on April 1st in a dressing room here to my left, just following practice before a playoff game with Toronto, that Barry had contracted leukemia. Was there a feeling of finality then, or was there hope for him?
No, I think, Gene, there's an awful lot of hope, because you knew Barry, I know Barry, and when Barry said that he was going to beat the disease, he just took it because Barry was saying it, that he was going to do it. You just kind of said, well, if Barry said he's going to beat leukemia, you know, it's got said and done, but that was not the case. But I think that there is an awful lot of, I guess, hope and respect towards Barry Ashby. We just expected him to beat the disease.
Eddie, in a sense, you were the senior citizen of that club. When did it begin to dawn on you that he wasn't going to make it?
Well, I think, Gene, that I guess the more we visited Barry, the more we, you know, were with him and spent time with him and everything else, he realized as hard as he was fighting, the disease was winning. And we went to visit him in the hospital, and you could tell, you know, the disease was, you know, in the advanced stages. And I guess the club just felt that Barry had more than he could really handle.
No one's an expert, I can't believe, in this era, but since you've lived through that, if you were to go in that dressing room next door and talk to these young players, how might you ask them or tell them to handle this?
Well, I think a lot like Barry. I think that Pelle is a very, very respected player, you know, throughout the league, and especially with his teammates. Barry loved to win, Pelle loved to win, and I think what you could do most for them is to do them proud by going out and doing a great job of winning the game and having a great season.
We'll be back with more after this.
Awaiting the start of the special ceremonies and to Pelle this evening. And Eddie, a lot of people probably wonder why the game is being played, and Edmonton graciously offered to cancel the game or at least postpone it for a while. And in a way, when you really think about it, and we think back being familiar in this situation and other players, that playing the game tonight is probably the best medicine that this young team could have. I couldn't agree more, Bobby. I think it was awfully nice of the Edmonton Oilers and Glenn Sather in particular to offer to postpone the game, but I totally agree with Flyers management with playing the game tonight. I think that the game had to be played sooner or later. Pelle's, you know, left and will no longer be, you know, with the Flyers or with us at all, and I think for the team to get underway as quickly as possible. I think that, you know what, Bobby, that's what Pelle would want himself. You know, I've talked to a couple of players throughout the day, and they've said that to the last one, that, you know, Gump wants to win. He loves the challenge, and it's been brought out about that, and how he'd like to play the top teams and the best there is. And he would want them to play, and he would want them to go out there and do their best. And it's almost a tonic in a sense that when you do hurt or when you do have anger built up in you, the best thing to do is do something physical, is to work out that aggression, work out that anger and that sorrow in doing something physical and doing it, you know, getting the sweat, so to speak, on the brow, because there's not much you can do. The tears have gone.
You can only cry so often, and now you vent that anger. You've got to go on about business, and I think the Flyers will do exactly that tonight. The game may start slowly, but I think it'll build in momentum as the game progresses. But also, you have to look at the other team that's coming in here tonight, the Edmonton Oilers, the Stanley Cup defending champions. It's also tough on them to come in here and play in front of, a Philadelphia crowd, a Philadelphia team, after losing such a respected player from their lineup, as recent as Sunday morning. So I think that Edmonton is very kind of maybe not cautious, but maybe very aware of the situation here in the Spectrum tonight. And I think once the game's underway, maybe a couple of shifts, when each player gets out there for a little while, they'll take their mind, to business, and that's the game at hand tonight here in the Spectrum. And once the game starts, I think the players will feel relief. They've got their mind on what they have to do out there, and I think you'll find that they're professionals. They'll do it.
Edmonton are wearing black armbands on their left arm. The Flyers have a small number 31 on their left shoulder, which you'll be able to see throughout this game.
What I liked here in the Philadelphia area with this tragedy with Pelle Lindbergh is that the way the people, the fans, hockey fans, and just people in general in the street, the way they've responded as far as, respect for Pelle Lindbergh. They feel the hurt, maybe a little bit of the anger that some people feel that Pelle at such a young age is such a great athlete was taken. But also I've got to give credit to the other sports teams in the league, hockey, as well as different sports teams here in the city. An awful lot of their star players and the different teams here in the city respond with various statements. And I think that an athlete, doesn't matter what sport it's in, I think you've got some kind of a common bond. And I think through the tragedy with Pelle Lindbergh, that was shown here by all our professional sports teams here in Philadelphia.
It carried over throughout the hockey world as well. Mike Emmerich told me that they're doing the game at Madison Square Garden on Monday evening, and that is probably one of the toughest buildings in all of sport to play and to gain the affection of the fans. And you knew that they were going to have a minute of silence for Pelle before the game, and they were very apprehensive because they did not know how the crowd would react, and especially it being a Flyer. And they asked for this silence, and he said it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. And then after it was over, they all gave a thunderous applause in respect for that young man. So it just illustrates the great impact that he had, not only in this city and the Delaware Valley, but throughout North America and as well as Europe, definitely as well as Europe. The Flyer players are now coming on the ice, as well as Edmonton. And they'll be lining up at their respective blue lines.
Okay, there's an awful lot of nervous stomachs out there right now with both teams skating to the blue lines, awaiting the start of the ceremonies.
It's awkward. It's so awkward. And I'm sure everybody knows that. It's no different for a player as it is for an ordinary person when they suffer loss in a tragedy such as this. You never know what to say. You never know if it's the right thing, or you never know what to do. You're never sure if that's the right thing. And let's now go down to our partner, Gene Hart.
All of our good friends, what was to have been tonight a shimmering evening of spectacular hockey with the two greatest teams in the professional game has become instead a deeply more personal occasion as we, the Flyers family, the team, the organization, and especially you fans gather to grieve over the loss of one of our own. But really, since Pelle Lindbergh's entire existence exuded nothing but the positive things in life, what I'd like to do this evening is make the theme of our ceremony not the mourning of his death, but the celebrating of a life that we in Philadelphia were privileged to share. But please, first, let me assure you, particularly the youngsters, that our sorrow will diminish And it's going to be replaced with rich memories that are part of the legacy that Pelle leaves us. And the sorrow is going to ease, and we will endure, because it's really the marvel and the essence of life and its continuation. And when you talk of life, what a life filled with triumphs and achievements. And I think it all goes back and was spawned in 1959 when Pelle was 8, because in that year a team called the Flyers was born. And in the ensuing years, this young Swede began to formulate a dream. He wanted to make that dream a trip to North America, to play hockey, and to conquer the toughest position in the world's toughest game. But as he approached the teenager, the dream began to refine even more, because Pelle now wanted to make that challenge in a place called Philadelphia, because there he had an idol who had already become a legend in this building. And it was his dream to become the best and to have his name on the Vezina Trophy alongside this idol, Bernie Perron. And so the work began. The Swedish national team, the Olympics, the Maine Mariners, and then fate magically intervening, he was drafted by Philadelphia. And it took 3 years and a superb relationship between the old legend, Bernie, and the new one, Pelle. And I think a marvelous part of the story that in the finest tradition of the melting pot of this country, when you think about it, last year this Swede with a fellow countryman, a Czech, a Finn, Americans, and Canadians had a spectacular year. And that team drove him to the top of the mountain, culminating last spring in Canada, when his idol presented him with the highest achievement that they could give him, the Vezina Trophy, and finally his name was there. And so that far-fetched 100,000 to 1 dream that began so long ago, so many thousands of miles away, came true. He was the best. And when you add to that he was admired on 2 continents, he was honored in his homeland, and he was loved in Philadelphia, and you put together his marvelous personality and the manner that endeared him to everyone with whom he came in touch. And you add to that he was able to share all of this with a fiancée who made his every day a joy. And I might add, a young lady whose courage and strength this past week has been magnificent. And then you add to that the ultimate triumph that posthumously, through the mart of transplant, is given life to 2 people this week. It is the fulfillment of a life far beyond what most or any of us in this building can expect or hope to achieve in a lifetime twice or 3 times his 26 years. So as Dave Poulin said yesterday, Pelle is indeed to be envied. And in a sense, I think all of us here should be envied, because of the blessing of kind circumstance, we were permitted to be part of this extraordinary person's life. And so we all in this building owe fate and the Gumper our eternal gratitude. And now another member of our Flyers family, Father John Casey.
Do we have to hold that? You want to hold it for me? Dear merciful God in heaven, we need your blessing tonight. Oh, how we need your blessing. We've had a terrible few days since the tragic news of Sunday morning. We ask you to bless Pelle's mother and dad, his beloved Shastine, the wonderful Snyder family, the Tobins, the Scotts, the Allens, the Clarks, the Flyers staff, and all of you up there in the stands, the loyal, faithful Flyer fans, and finally, over here to the left, the Flyer players, with Captain Dave Poulin, Coach Mike, EJ, Paul, Pat, Bill, Bernie, Sudsy, Kurt, and all the gang. Oh God, you, in your infinite wisdom, know what this loss has meant to all of us. You know how hurt we are, how crushed, how desperate we are for your blessing. That's why we ask you tonight. You know too how much the little Gumper, the friendly, smiling little Swede, meant to this hockey team. He was a real, honest-to-goodness Flyer, with all that implies. He was proud to be a National Hockey League player, and prouder still to be a Flyer. He loved his Flyer sweater and the number 31. Do you wonder why we ask you to bless us tonight? As if this loss is not enough, the loss of Pelle, guess who are our guests tonight? Dear Lord, yes, the Edmonton Oilers, the Stanley Cup champions. We ask God to give us the strength to be worthy challengers to the reign of the Edmonton Oilers. So we conclude now with gratitude to the Oilers for helping us out on a very difficult evening and an impossible situation, and ask you, God, to bless them for their kindness. Almighty God, with your help tonight, we promise to carry on and make Pelle proud of us. You told us to love one another. You repeated that commandment many times. And you know better than any one of us how Pelle lived that command of yours. So give a special blessing now to the teammates of Pelle Lindbergh as they skate out on the ice tonight without the smiling, the loving, the gracious, fun-loving Gumper, and who carried such a wonderful report card to the throne of Almighty God. God bless you, Pelle, and pray for us.
Friends, I think you should know that the entire Lindbergh family is here tonight with his fiancée, Shastine, and they, along with the players and coaches and management of the Flyers, would like to thank each of you for your kind expressions of sympathy. Your support at this extraordinarily difficult time was so much appreciated. There was nobody more thrilled in all of hockey
that a two-syllable chant in this building was changed from Bernie to Pelle. He said earlier in the week it was like losing a son, and I would think there would be no more appropriate spokesman now for this organization than Bernard Marcel Perrin.
Thank you, Gene. Mr. and Mrs. Lindbergh, Shastine, friends and fans of Pelle. As I stand before you tonight, I feel that our hearts are one. Every single one of us lost someone we respected, someone who made us very happy, and someone who made us awfully proud. Every single one of us lost a friend, a man who loved hockey, a man who loved his family, and a man who loved the fans. No single moment in my entire career has been as difficult as this one. For this one is filled with flashbacks of one of the most memorable and positive relationships the game of hockey could ever produce. Flashbacks of a young, boyish goalie from Sweden who relied on me to teach him how hockey in America is played. Flashbacks of how this same young, boyish goalie brought to my own life a sense of purpose and accomplishment. The paper have said I was his hero. I wish I could tell you how much I admired him. I wish I could have only told him this. Told him how much I admired him, how much I care about him. A goalie stands on a very lonely island, and I'm grateful that I was able to share some of that island with him, but for too brief a period. Pelle Lindbergh had become, without question, one of hockey's greatest goalies. And when death defeats greatness, we all mourn. And when death defeats youth, we mourn even more. But as we mourn, we must strive to define those qualities that Pelle left behind, that can give us strength throughout this period and beyond. I personally feel, and the team also feels, that Pelle Lindbergh left a legacy to all of us. Pelle Lindbergh had the sense of determination second to none. His spirit, his will, was made of iron. His ability to bounce back from defeat and setbacks will always be imprinted in my memory. His determination to become the best goalie in the National Hockey League was totally evident to all of us who knew him. And when he became the best, his superstar status did not go to his head. Pelle was still Pelle. Behind that white mask And behind that superb talent was a boy, young, naive, and sensitive, whose friendly twinkle and engaging innocence drew people to him. Pelle was friendly, likable, anxious to please. He loved the fans and he loved kids. When he signed autographs, he knew he was making the fans happy, and that made him happy. Most of all, Pelle loved life. And the saddest thing about this tragedy is that while his positive attitude and love for life helped him to overcome defeat, he could not defeat death. But in a way, he has. Pelle is already giving life to others, and what Mike Keenan has appropriately called the ultimate save. Pelle, you will always live in our hearts. Pelle, we miss you.
There is one journey left for Pelle to return to his beautiful Sweden, where a nation waits to greet its son. And that country in his last trip brought to my mind the last stanza of a familiar and haunting poem by Robert Frost. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. Indeed, he has miles to go before he sleeps, but on the journey, the affection of thousands of us and the love of those teammates will act as silent escorts, and will, we pray, make the Lindbergh's family peace and Pelle's sleep deep, enduring, and serene. Now, ladies and gentlemen, would you honor Pelle Lindbergh and his country as we present Hildegard Lindström singing the national anthem of Sweden.
Jag kan
Thank you all.
I went to those hockey schools all the time during the summer, and there was always some national team goalie there helping all the youngsters out. And I was at the hockey school for since I was 10 years old almost. I went there at least 6-7 years in a row, and every summer I learned something new from the big heroes over here, and I read different goaltenders tips and all kinds of stuff like that. And that was a really nice tournament for us. We were the only team that didn't get beat by the US. We tied them 2-2, or they tied us 27 seconds to go in the first game, and we were really disappointed, but it ended up to be the only team that didn't get beat by them. And I had a lot of good memories from that Olympics. It was a lot of fun, and one of the best things was that the US won against, that they beat the Russians. The bigger rinks over in Europe makes the goal is to play more in the net, and over there you have to play around the net, you have to use your stick more, and I wasn't used to that. And when they shoot the puck in around the net and everything is bouncing out in front of the net, and that's completely different compared to what I'm used to from Europe. At that time I was really disappointed, especially the first year that I was sent out. They never gave me a chance to play in the National League or anything, but they told me that it was just for a year or maybe a year and a half to get used to the American style of playing, or North American style. And they told me all the time that just do good here and learn the style, and learn to play around the net and everything, and then you're going to get a good chance to play in the National League. So I believed, and I worked really hard in the American League. Well, there was times when I was, really disappointed, and a lot of bus rides and all this and that, and I was playing the national team in Sweden, and I asked myself, what am I doing over here in the minor leagues here, and I'm never going to get a chance. But somehow I said to myself, one day I'm going to play in that National League, and I always been like that. I'm always wanted to play in the National League, and I said I'm going to give it 3 years, and I'm going to try my hardest. First year, the first European goalie to ever make an all-star game, and then you come in there, and Gretzky made almost a fool of myself. I mean, he scored 4 goals in a couple of minutes. And so I played in Canada Cup 1981, and I thought it was really tough to start to play hockey in July, or even over here they started one training camp in June already. And after that Canada Cup, I had a terrible fall in hockey with the Flyers, and I was really tired of hockey already in October, November. Well, Bernie has been my coach, but he's also been one of my best friends since I came over to America, or to the Flyers. The first year in Maine, he came up, and it was not only hockey we talked about. He took me out for dinner, so we were sitting talking about everything, boating or fishing, and he was like a good friend over there. He was a guy I could talk to about everything or anything. I think it was the last game against Quebec in that series. I got hit by a puck, slap shot from the blue line right on the kneecap, and it was really sore that day and the next day, but then it almost went away. We had put a lot of ice and stuff on it, and so the first 2 games against Edmonton, it was sore, but not so bad as I couldn't play. But then in the 3rd game against Edmonton, up in Edmonton, I got hit on the same spot again with another puck, and then it wasn't the same after that.
If you look back over your hockey career, what would you rate as your biggest thrill?
No comparison, the final or the playoffs this year with the Flyers. That's the biggest thing I ever played, and that was the funniest time I ever had in hockey too, I think. Unbelievable feeling for me, especially for a Swedish guy or a European goaltender to win the Vesna Trophy. That's something you just dream about. On the other hand, I like it when kids come up and they want to talk hockey and they maybe want to have an autograph, because I remember not too long ago I was the same way. I like to talk to the national team goaltenders, and they were great when they want to sign one of my gloves or one of my sticks or something like that. So I remember that like it was yesterday. So it's a lot of fun when all the kids come up and they want to talk about National League or whatever. So I don't mind, really.
What are you shooting for now? What's your next major goal?
To win the Stanley Cup. That's the big thing. That's where the whole team, the organization is working for, to win the cup. something between stand-up and reflex, small little guy. If they ever remember me 20 years from now, it's probably going to be some new Swedish super goalie over in North America winning the Western Trophy at that time, so they don't even remember me. But maybe some old players remember me that I was the first European goal to win the Western or something like that. I don't know. I don't think anybody will remember me 20 years from now.
That previous footage on Pelle Lindbergh, courtesy of Hockey Night in Canada. And with us now is the Hockey Night in Canada color analyst, Dave Richardson. And Dave, this has been a very tragic thing, not only here in the Delaware Valley, but I'm sure it's been throughout the hockey world. How's it affected the people back home in Canada?
Well, certainly the first reaction was shock. Sunday morning, and we got the news. Canadians are very attached to European hockey players because of the international exposure and because it's the #1 sport in Canada. There's no question about it. And when something like that happens, you almost take it personally, Bob. And the feeling, particularly with the young people, because of the exposure that Pelle got last year with the Stanley Cup playoffs in Edmonton, and I really don't think that they'll ever get over it for the season.
You had a personal experience as well Sunday night, you were telling me this morning.
Well, yeah, exactly. We have some youngsters. I'm assistant coach of a team back home, and the reaction by the young people, and we almost had to stop practicing and have a meeting and explain the situation, all from the cars, all from the drinking aspect of it, and how to put everything back in the right perspective. And I think it is something that that will live in the memory of young people who are around at that particular time.
I know that Winnipeg has a couple of Swedish players, Thomas Steen in particular, and you're very close with the Winnipeg Jets because you cover them just the same way that Ed Van Impe and I cover here with the Flyers.
Well, Thomas tried to do an interview for television the other day, and he just couldn't get it done. He couldn't get it done. He said he grew up with Pelle. He was 12 years old. They've played pretty much all their hockey together, and he's a quiet-spoken individual anyway, Thomas, and they never did get it on. So you can see how it affects people right around the world. Thomas being one incident in Winnipeg, and when we go to Edmonton because of the closeness of the finals last year. I was in Calgary the time before, and Håkan Loob was there, that fine Swedish player. So his personality, not only his playing ability, the fact that he was a fine human being, I think that's the thing that they remember mostly and will always remember.
You played the game, and I know you had a similar situation when you were playing with Baltimore in the old American Hockey League.
Well, we were practicing on November the 22nd, '63 in Washington, the day President Kennedy was shot, and of course the entire nation was numb from the whole thing. It was like time kind of standing still. But the amazing part was that we played a couple nights later, and as professionals and with the fans, everyone seems to bind together when things get tough. Everyone seems to react with the right way. They take their emotions and they channel it right back into the game, and I think that's what's going to happen tonight.
That's one I think a lot of people are concerned about, how the players are going to react. How will they perform? Not only the Flyers, but the Edmonton Oilers as well, because I know they're very affected by what has happened.
Well, there's no question about it. Bob McCammon has a close touch right here with this hockey club. They met last year in the playoffs. But I think the fans, and I think the quality of the individual that Pelle was, and the emotion that both these teams will have, once they get on that ice, I think there will be somewhat of a relief, and I think they will have that feeling of almost like a big rock taken off their shoulders. And I think when they have to, the natural instinct and reaction to the game will take over.
This is a thing where it happens most of the cases in the off season where you can adjust a little easier. This is during the season. It's to a young player on the rise, or if not, almost at the pinnacle of his career. That makes it harder, do you think?
Oh, there's no question about it. I think any other situations that have come to mind in hockey, in my case, maybe Tim Horton was the only other one I think that was very close to the season. Some other youngsters in the off-season. Thurman Munson is the only other athlete that I can remember right in the middle of the season. And I think that's why it'll be with us all year, Bob. I think that's why it'll stay here, because of the high profile that this hockey team has, that this particular individual has. And I don't think it's something that you can just blot up, but I think that the game itself and the quality of people involved in the game will push it back and go on.
best that it is the two best teams right now.
No question about it. I think that that's, if there is a positive and a bright side to it all, is that two quality teams are going to play after the aftermath.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you, Bob.
We'll be right back. We're back here with the Flyers Vice President, Keith Allen. Keith, this is the second time we've had to deal with this, a death in the Flyer family, in a sense. Barry Ashby, of course, the first one. But this one, I think, is somewhat different than that with Barry.
Yes, it is. Of course, this was sudden and unexpected. In Barry's case, he had leukemia, and we all knew it was going to be a struggle if he made it. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but it was a month, I think, from the time he learned that he had the disease till he died. And I think the Flyer family and his players became accustomed to the fact that he may not make it, and so it wasn't as big a shock when he died as it was with Pelle.
One of the things, you have to pick up the pieces, and that's always the toughest part. How hard is it for management when you have to really start getting back to reality in a sense and think of the team and think of the future?
Well, of course, losing both of these individuals put a big hole in our lineups, and losing Pelle in the start of a season like we have makes it almost impossible to replace him. He was the first All-Star. He was recognized as the best goalie in hockey right now. And you just don't find those fellows very easily. And as you're aware, we're playing Darren Jensen tonight, a young fellow that we think has good promise. He certainly played well in Hershey this year, and we've all scouted him quite a bit, and he's done extremely well. And we had planned on bringing him up later in the season to look at him, and certainly I think he deserves a chance. Unfortunately, this is a difficult time for him to come in and attempt to do a good job, but I'm confident he will, because he's a game little guy, and I think he'll do well.
Everybody around the National League, of course, is always saddened. It's, I wouldn't say amazing, but it's always comforting to know that even though you have differences and you're always trying to do better than the other guy, that when something like this happens, they always rally to your side.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think that it shocked the whole hockey community and the whole sports world, in fact, and especially when you get a player of Pelle's stature that is killed, it's really a shock. And I think that Bob has probably heard from everybody in sports right now. I know that the switchboard has been constantly filled with telephone calls, not only from other sports people, but also from fans in this area.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Keith Allen. We'll be back right after this.
They have just finished flooding the ice. The Zamboni just making the final pass around the rink before we start the game itself. You get the Edmonton Oilers and the Philadelphia Flyers, and I understand, Eddie, that the teams wanted to have the ice flooded after the ceremony so that they can regain their composure and try and settle their nerves and also their feelings. I can understand that, and I can appreciate that, Bobby, but by the same token, it's been a long time since they had their warm-up, you know, before they get back out there right again here and get going at it when the game starts. But I'm looking forward to the game this evening, and the reason why I say that is because you know, these guys are professionals on both teams, and I'm sure they're going to go out there and they're going to, you know, give 100%, and we'll have a very, very entertaining hockey game and a very, very difficult evening. As you can expect, all the signs that are hung around the spectrum are for Pelle Lindbergh. I think the fans are a little bit apprehensive as well. They're not sure how to react. And as we talked about it, you and I, and of course Dave Richardson, and saying that as the game progresses, I think that everything will come out. You can't say get back to normal, but it would, at least it'll Well, we're talking about the fans, Bob. You're talking about the fans and the players and everything else. And I think there's one thing we haven't really mentioned that maybe might be worthwhile mentioning. You being an ex-goaltender, is Darren Jensen called up from Hershey. He is on the hot seat.
It's incredible. The young man, his first National League start was in the Island against the New York Islanders, which was not successful. And now his first start at home in the Spectrum happens to be through a series of events tonight. And it's a very, very difficult situation for a young man to be thrust into. When everybody came through the turnstiles tonight, they handed out a small card about the size of a hockey card or a baseball card with Pelle's picture on the front and then on the back. Very simply stated, in loving memory of Pelle Lindbergh, our goalie, our friend. And 31, the sweater number that Lindbergh wore, and that will, I'm sure, will be retired here at the Spectrum, and nobody else will wear that jersey.